here's the light bulb moment. I was on an aeroplane very recently, and you know, you guys know I fly a lot. I, you know, go off to different places, work, no holiday. But I did take a holiday recently, and that was pretty good, over to Spain, and I did work there as well. But I was on a plane, and as I was boarding, in fact, on this particular journey, I was taking a lot of planes, all right? So there was a lot of planes, a lot of journeys. So I was getting on and off aircraft. And as I was getting on this plane, I looked into the cockpit where the pilot, co-pilot, and all first officers and all those kind of people sit. And I felt sad. I felt really, really sad. And it dawned on me, you guys, you know, most of you know I've got children. It dawned on me that, you know, because of the way that the world is and has been for a relatively long time now, the days when I, as a child, were allowed into the cockpit of an aeroplane in flight, mid-flight, are long gone. Our children, you know, I hope that something changes. I really do. But let's not go political. I hope that something changes and security gets relaxed. You know, in my lifetime, I'm just not sure that's going to happen. But I felt incredibly sad. And I felt incredibly sad because you know, as a young child, I remember going into the cockpit, you know, and thinking this is absolutely amazing. I still to this day find the whole concept of a bit of metal, a tube that heavy, not only taking off but staying in the sky and then landing safely. I still can't get my head around the whole engineering of it. But as a child, I was fascinated. Now, the good news is, and many of you may not know this, on one of the flights that I took, you know, on holiday, 2 of my children were on that flight, and in fact, the stewardess, I think, just came up to, you know, the cabin crew came up to us and said, look, you know, would your boys like to go and look in the cockpit? I'm amazed because I just didn't think that happened anymore. But this was whilst the plane was on the ground. It hadn't taken off yet. So anyway, 2 lads walked into the cockpit. They've got the captain there, the co-captain, this great big bank of switches and lights and buttons and everything else. And they were absolutely blown away. And, you know, I haven't heard much about anything else since that experience. And look, what that thing did, and, you know, first of all, that sadness, but also seeing the joy on 2 of my kids' faces that, you know, they got into a cockpit and they were able to see, was amazing for me. And it just reminded me that about checklists. All right, you know, as I said to you, I have that slight kind of, I'm always a little bit amazed that this piece of aircraft, this tube of metal, so heavy. I mean, look at the average aircraft that you get onto, a passenger aircraft. Look at the sheer size of it. Imagine the weight that's in that. And I don't mean to freak any of you out. If any of you are scared of flying, I'm probably saying the worst thing to you. But that whole thing of it coming warm and sunny on the Gold Coast, Dan, it's Richard, brilliant. You know, the thought that aircraft gets up. Now, I'm kind of, you know, rambling on a little bit, but the point of this is that pilots, you know, we entrust our lives with them and everything else. And, you know, you get onto the plane. Nowadays, actually, a lot of the times the cockpit's closed. You don't see who's flying you. And we put enormous amounts of trust in people that we don't see or don't know. And that's pretty amazing, I think. But what amazes me most is that these pilots, with hopefully years and years and years of experience, years of, you know, sort of flying hours of doing this, you would imagine that, you know, getting ready for takeoff is something that most pilots are going to know automatically, right? And that's what I would think. However, I do know that pilots, all pilots, flight regulations, worldwide flight regulations, are that pilots have to go through a checklist. You know, thank goodness, a checklist of checks and just making sure that everything's, tickety boo. And apparently, before we even think about getting on the plane, there's a walk around. I don't know whether it's the captain or the co-pilot that gets to do it, but just a walk around the aircraft to just to check that everything is okay. I'm not sure that's always the case, particularly on these like really quick turnarounds that they do in terminals. But anyway, this checklist that goes through, it doesn't matter if the pilot has got thousands and flying hours and years of experience. They still go through this international checklist. And look, it reminded me of when I started in recruitment. Many of you know my story, that it was in that fashion recruitment agency. Like I say, high volume, low margin, and most of you will know my initial kind of training that was given to me. It was like, here's a phone, here's the yellow pages, good luck. That was it. So it's like, just making the phone calls high. Started off with A's and Aardvarks and all of that, and ended up with Zenit or whatever it was. But making all these calls anyway. So that, but the point is that what I ended up doing, this is pre-computerization, by the way. I'm not that old. It came in relatively quickly after this, but we just used to record everything on these index cards. And of course, I progressed and I ended up being a consultant there and a manager, and ultimately, the operations director in that business. I ran that company ultimately. But as a recruiter, I remember, part of my induction's the wrong word, but part of my education, part of that training was going along to client meetings and taking requirements and, understanding how a placement happened in the fashion recruitment arena. And I'll be honest, in those early days, it kind of felt a bit like that, I'm sure I used to do things like, I'm not a person that kind of relies on luck now, but I remember at the time I probably was. I think somebody gave me a lucky rabbit's foot, or, I may have had my placement pants or something I was put on if I was trying to close an offer. But there wasn't any process. That's the point I wanted to make. There wasn't any process. There wasn't any defined path that we used to take. There wasn't any checklist like the pilots kind of do. It's like, right, they know they've got to do those things in that order in order to get the plane off the ground safely. And though they know how that works and they've done it countless and countless number of times, they still go through that check. Well, we didn't have that. We didn't have that in that first, recruitment business that I worked in, and ultimately ended up being a director there. Now, again, most of you know my story. I then, started that first business with James Calm, but it was there that I met Tony Byrne, the late great Tony Byrne, one of my first mentors, along with James, but probably got more from Tony in terms of actual recruitment knowledge and power. The thing that Tony gave me and introduced me to, some of you will be familiar with, some of you may not even know who Tony Byrne is, bless him, but that doesn't matter. Let me tell you about this most amazing guy. He introduced me to the 30 steps in the placement process, and I've got to tell you, it just blew me away. It absolutely blew me away for the first time ever, right? And by this stage, I think I've been working in recruitment for, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, something like that. For the first time ever, I had that light bulb moment. All right, so several light bulb moments going off with this. I had that light bulb moment, and it all just fell into place. It literally, I looked at it and thought, oh, this is amazing. This is amazing. Here's a checklist of steps. In his, in Tony's eyes, it was 30. Here's a checklist of 30 steps that every permanent placement goes through. And I was like, wow, absolutely wow. And then I started to track my placements, track my deals using this checklist. So, you know, take a complete job order was step number one. And, you know, I'll be going, right, I've done step number one. Step number two, what is it? Make a recruiting plan. These are Tony's 30. Make a recruiting plan. And I used to track my way through each deal. Now I was running my own business, but I was a recruiter. I was there was myself, James, Tony, and then we started to recruit consultants, and I trained them using this exact 30 steps because boom, it just happened for me. So this 30 steps checklist I used, the templates that I used, the forms, the scripts, Tony's training. And it's interesting because prior to this session, I was watching an old video of Tony's and I'm like, oh, wow. And if you haven't experienced Tony Burns training, find it, all right? It's not on YouTube. I've got VHS cassettes. And that was the thing, you know, his whole program there was on VHS cassettes. And then I had the pleasure of, you know, I'd met him, then found the program, worked through the program. I was his biggest fan. And then I was really blessed because he invited me to do my training apprenticeship with him. So, you know, and the rest is actually before that, using those checklists, using that 30 steps as a guide to every placement I made, I've got to say to you, that's probably the biggest reason why I had phenomenal success, not just success, phenomenal success in that first recruitment business that I owned. And when I say phenomenal success, I went from, and I worked the same industry. Okay. So retail, fashion retail was what I knew. My company then was Retail Profiles. What I did was I went from 100% contingency, not knowing anything about retained, not knowing anything about headhunting or sourcing candidates proactively, following those 30 steps. And obviously, you know, a bit more in terms of like, I was just a sponge for information. I built a business that was 100% retained, 100% retained. So for any of you that don't know that distinction, Nikki Taylor saying the same thing. Tony Burn training got me where I am today. Using that, you know, 100% retained. Sorry, the retained thing is that instead of being paid right at the end, you know, most of us, and I'd worked that, was 100% contingency. On contingency, I got paid when the candidate started. On retained, I got paid for the work that I did. So I got paid before I even started. I got paid during the assignment. And actually, I used to get paid on successful offer and acceptance, not start date of the candidate. So, you know, essentially I would get my fee, my 100% of my fee before the candidate even started. Now, how did I do that? I'd love to say to you I was some kind of genius. I wasn't, all right? What I was a great student, and I didn't question it. I just said, look, this process, this 30 steps process, I am going to follow it to the letter. And the reason for that is I was looking around at other people Tony was touching with his training, other people that were following the system. Some of them were following it wholeheartedly. Some were following it like, I don't know, toe in the water. Let me just try a bit. Oh, I like this. I don't like that. I'm not going to use this. I'll use this. But I adopted it. I literally adopted the 30 steps and I used it, and I trained everybody coming into my business using the exact system. And it worked, and it worked, and it worked. Phenomenal success, 100% retained. But that's, you know, nothing if all you sell is one retainer. We were selling so many retainers that I had to recruit consultants, headhunters essentially, to fill these assignments. We were winning stuff, you know, winning retained assignments. And not actually being able to fulfill it. I didn't have enough people hitting phones and able to headhunt. I was doing all of this. And so phenomenal growth. The other thing I should mention was the average fee, you know, previously in this sector was 12.5%. We went to 30% fees overnight. And it was just, the secret to that was literally because of the 30 steps, I had the confidence to pitch it. confidence bordering on arrogance slightly. It was like, why wouldn't you pay me 30%? Now, I'm not here today, and I certainly don't do this. I don't say to people, oh, you should be charging 30%. No, you know, I don't think that. I don't know your market well enough to make that judgment. But what I do say is, whatever your full fee is, stick to it. You know, stick to it if providing you've got this process behind you, whether that's 30 steps or, you know, whatever I tell you, then it's fine. But you know, have the confidence, the conviction, if you like, that what you do represents absolutely exceptional value for money. And that's the belief system that's going on for me. I just looked at it and went, 30 steps, brilliant. I think I'm worth every single penny of the 30%. In fact, I actually think that my clients get an exceptional value at 30%. Maybe they should be paying me more. That was what was going through my mind, the mindset. Phenomenal growth. I built that team. And I'd love to say to you, you know, James was involved in it. He probably wasn't. He, you know, was involved in the startup of that business and supported me and was a mentor and everything else. It wasn't someone picking up phones and, you know, I'd pull him for the odd meeting if I needed to. But, you know, it was more what you call a silent partner. Actually, he wasn't very silent. He was very vociferous, but it wasn't someone that was actively recruiting or filling any of these assignments that we were bringing. He wasn't winning the assignments either, I hasten to add. It was either myself or my colleague Tony. And we were both really young guys. So, you know, people around us were like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? We got to the point where actually we didn't even have to go out on meetings. The repeat business was coming through and the recommendations and referrals within an organization, I mean, it just blew us away. And in my mind, and actually, you know, I know it to be true, we changed that part of retail recruitment. We changed that. You know, prior to that, people weren't selling retainers. They weren't getting higher than, I don't know, 15, 20% fees. We set the bar. We ended up training and developing lots of people through our system that, you know, have gone on to, and some of them still do, run very successful recruitment businesses in that sector. So we know it's phenomenal. Okay, so phenomenal success and growth. Now, let's get forward with this. You guys know I travel the world. I go into recruitment businesses. Yes, I work with 25 Tribe and Vault members, but I also get called into companies that are in trouble, all right? Companies that, you know, say, look, Roy, something's going wrong for us. Can you come in and have a look? And I do an audit, all right? So I take an audit, and it's a, you know, some of you have seen this document that I go through, and it's a process, it's a checklist again, but it's an audit of all of the processes. And one of the things that I look for is a clearly defined step-by-step process, recruitment process. Because if a company has that step-by-step, whether it's 30 or 12 or 10, I don't really care. But if a company has that defined way, this is how we do it in our business, then what happens is that's communicated to clients, to candidates, to consultants working in the agency. You know, everybody's on page with it. Everybody knows. Yeah, we're at step 3 of this assignment. What I also see is when there's a clearly defined process, people sell better. And here's my thing. I am absolutely shocked. I'm not backed by the number of companies I go into that don't have a process. Now, I know it's hard for you guys to believe. It's hard for you to believe because you've got a process in your business. I know that. 25 Tribe members, you do. You know, you might not enjoy a process, but you understand it. You understand that it's a series of actions delivered consistently that kind of mark you out. All right. You understand the whole thing about McDonald's, the I can't even say it, McDonald'sization ish worldwide, which is, you know, you could go, it doesn't matter whether you're in a couple of people may have been joining me from Bangkok today, so it doesn't matter whether you're on the Sukhumvit Road in Bangkok and you're going to the McDonald's there. It doesn't matter whether you're going to McDonald's in Amsterdam. It doesn't matter whether some of you saying, I'm never going to go to McDonald's. It Doesn't matter whether you're a McDonald's, Nicky and Richard Taylor, out on the Gold Coast in Brisbane. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. If you go into a McDonald's, it's a formula, isn't it? It's like, I remember the time they used to say, oh, if you go into McDonald's, and I tried this. I went into McDonald's in Bangkok on the Sukhumvit Road and I ordered a Big Mac. And I bit into this Big Mac and I'm like, oh my God, that just tastes, this was years ago, like a long, long time ago, 20 years ago. It tasted exactly like McDonald's in London, in Croydon or Westminster, near Westminster Cathedral, one of the first ones. Because it's a process and it's followed consistently, and that's the McDonald's formula or whatever. Well, I'm shocked because most recruitment businesses I go into, most recruitment business owners, and that's, not counting you guys at all, don't have that consistent process. They're doing it as I used to do it, off the back of a fag packet. Every assignment they're saying, yes, Mr. Client, we do this, this, and this. And then you look at them and they're saying something completely different to another client and saying something completely different internally. And the process doesn't look anything like the one that I've just heard them describe to somebody. And that's not good. All right. It's not good at all. Let me give you another story. I don't know whether you know this or not, but I enjoy cooking. I really, really enjoy cooking. And I hope my family kind of appreciates. I think they say that they appreciate my cooking, but I've been trying to perfect a recipe for tandoori chicken. All right. So I don't know. Do you like tandoori chicken? I love tandoori chicken. And actually, you know what? I get so disappointed because I go into a restaurant and it's not up to scratch. I get really, really angry. Not hungry. Hungry, yes, but angry. I get frustrated. I'm like, oh my God, how can you mess up tandoori chicken? So I've been trying to perfect this recipe, and I think I cracked it last night, right? So I made tandoori chicken, and actually I made the tandoori chicken 2 or 3 days ago. Anyone who knows this will know you got to make it, and then you got to marinate it, and then you cook it. And this was I don't have a tandoor oven. I just did it tandoori chicken in an oven. And it was delicious, absolutely delicious. But again, let me just give you this checklist then. It's not enough. Think about that, right? The ingredients for the tandoori chicken, I now got to remember. Clearly there was yogurt, and I made my own tandoor masala, spices and cumin, and I used minced ginger and garlic and lemon juice, and I sorry, what I did is I put an immediate marinade on the lemon on the chicken, let that go for a couple of ask James Carney, he'd know the recipe. Brilliant, Richard, well done. I'll tell you a story actually about tandoori chicken needs to be made correctly. Through me. Right, so the thing that I worked out is marinate this thing really quickly for about 20 minutes in lemon juice. Why am I telling you this story? Minced garlic and ginger, and then put it into the yogurt with the tandoor spice, etc., etc. Marinate that for at least 24 hours. I actually did mine for 48 hours, and boy, it was amazing, right? Everybody loved it. So I've got, you guys know I've got 4 kids, and they love food. They love chicken particularly. So I'm now that I've perfected that recipe, I know that's going to be a regular. Anyway, here's the point about this. It's not enough just to know what the ingredients are, is it? It's not enough to know, oh yeah, there's yogurt in it, and there's ginger, and there's garlic, and there's these tandoori spices, the masala, etc., etc. It's not enough just to know what ingredients there are. Could you imagine if you just chucked your chicken into a pot, put all the ingredients in, and expected that to work? It doesn't work, does it? Equally, if somebody just gave you a set of instructions, right, random instructions, all to do with making tandoori chicken, like, yeah, you've got to marinate it, and you've got to marinate it, and then also, you've got to make sure that your oven is really, really hot, and take the skin off the chicken thighs if you're using those, but keep the bone in. All these different things. If you just had a set of instructions, that wouldn't be good. The key to it is the syntax, all right? And for simple people like me, that means the order of things. So yes, the ingredients need to be there, and best quality ingredients, of course, all right? Next, you do need to have instructions. But if you just, you know, and I've done this before, where you go to make cakes and it's like, oh, I haven't got that, so I'm just going to jump to that. And you miss out a step or a stage. All of a sudden, you haven't got a cake, you've got a mess. All right. The point is that you've got to have the right ingredients. You've got to have the instructions. You've got to know how something works, but you've got to do them in the right order, consistently, in order to get that consistently perfect result. And it's the same thing with, you know, recruitment process. Where I've tripped up in the past is not my tandoori chicken with my with my recruitment is, and this is something that, you know, many of us will be guilty of, is as a veteran, you get to the point where, you know, like an airline pilot, you get to the point you go, I know this, I understand this. Like, I don't need to use a form or a template or anything else. It's in my head, Roy. And that's what I used to do. You know, I knew Tony's stuff. I knew 30 steps. I built 2/3 successful businesses off of the back of that system. But I had the arrogance as a veteran to turn around and go, I know that stuff. It's like, and I did, you know, it's like, I could tell you, I 30 steps, and there were 30 of them. I could tell you every single one of them, right? Don't test me. I could tell you every single one of them. But what I started to do was just cut corners. I'm like, okay, I don't need to do step 3. It's like, I understand that. Make a recruiting plan. Step 2, why do I need to do that? I know who I'm going to, you know, approach on this. Celebrate. It's like, I'm not going to celebrate. What's celebrate? You know. So what I started to do was take out steps, and what I also started to do was mix up the syntax or the order. And what I also started to do was mess around with the ingredients. And you know what? That happened. A couple of big deals went crashing and burning. A couple of consultants that I took on where I probably wasn't as thorough with my training. I'm like, you know what, there's the 30 steps, but let me tell you how I do it, you know? Or worst, they were watching me and they're going, well, hang on a second, he's not doing those 30 steps. I don't need to do them. And then as a result, their work suffers, right? So the point there is, if you're going to have a process, if you're going to have a system, then it's really, really vitally important that you stick to that system. Be the airline pilot who, it doesn't matter whether he or she has had thousands of bloody flying hours experience or years and years of being up in the air doing the same thing. They must get bored of those bloody checklists. And that's the reason people go, oh, I'm bored. You know, it's like, I don't want to do it. Forget it, all right? Because if you want to make sure, like the airline pilot, that plane consistently gets up in the sky, stays in the sky, lands safely. If you want to do that with your placements, I want to make sure I take the right information from my client. I want to make sure that I brief the candidates properly, debrief the clients properly. I want to make sure that I cover the salary issues. I want to make sure that all of that happens so that the candidate gets the offer that they're going to accept and they start. And they stay. Those are the things, right? So if you want to do those things consistently, stick to your process. Now, I've got a little surprise for you. It's an infographic. It's a checklist, all right? And I've had this designed like literally, so if there's any mistakes, it's my fault, because it's been designed literally a day or so ago because I wanted to do this session with you. Have you ever watched a veteran pilot? I won't read through the whole thing. Through an open cockpit door, prepare a plane for flight. I've put down 39 steps. Don't ask me to kind of tell you which ones are the different ones, but the reason why it's in an infographic is that I can remember them then. But look, what I want you to do is we'll give you this, all right? I'll send it to you. I'll post up in the Facebook group as a download or whatever. I will put it in that section, or perhaps I won't, but Dee and the team here will. And I want you to use this as a checklist this month for every single placement that you make, every deal that you work on, every vacancy that you take on and you start working. I want you to use this as a checklist and literally post it up on your wall, stick it up on your screensaver if you're a mobile office or whatever. But I want you to work through every single step. Now you may end up, you know, look, some of you I know have got your own process. That's fine. I want you to use your own document then. All right. So if you've got a process, maybe yours is, I don't know, 40 steps or 28 or whatever, or 12 or 16, it doesn't matter. But I want you to use whatever process, whether it's my infographic, which is now your infographic, or whether it's your own process. I want you to go back to your process this month. All right. Whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're somebody that's managing a whole team of recruiters, I know I've got some MDs on here who are, you know, group MDs, in fact, and have got lots and lots of offices across many different places, including Bangkok, if you are listening. But it doesn't matter. All right. So, you know, whether you're a solo recruiter, I want you to use this process. Whether you're a group MD commanding, I don't know, 50, 60, 80 employees, I want you to use the process. Every conversation that you have internally is about, if people start talking to you about a deal or a placement or a client or a candidate, refer them to the process. What stage are we at with this? What have we missed out? Now, the other thing I'll tell you is really, really simply, if anyone comes to me and says to me, oh, I've just had a deal go down, or I've got a client playing up or a candidate playing up or whatever, I get into this process and I ask them, which part of this checklist have we failed to complete? Because sure as eggs are eggs, all right, back to the cooking analogies, sure as chicken is chicken, it's always going to be one of these steps that lets the deal down. And I learned this from bitter experience. It's like when deals went down, I looked back at this checklist and realized I didn't do that. I skipped that. I glossed over that one. I didn't ask my client this question. These are the things that I did wrong. Okay. So look, I'm going to go back to, let's see if I can get you back on my screen. Download the infographic, use it in your office, post it up. Good. Okay. Thanks, Nikki. Use it in your office, put it on your screensaver, measure each of your deals where they are against that checklist. It will make a difference. All right. And I know this is the thing that helped me build my business, 2 other businesses after it, and every other recruitment business that I've coached and trained thereafter. So whether you use Tony Burns' 30 steps, if you're, you know, old school like me, whether you use the infographic I've given you, 39 steps, or whether you've got your own one, whether that's 12 steps or 3 steps, I don't care. Stick to your process. All right. It won't let you down. It really won't let you down. So look, been great hanging out with you. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it, you know, even if it's just sharing tandoori chicken recipes with you guys in 2-5 Tribe. That's always quite cool. I don't know where these stories come from. They just come. Until I see you in a couple of weeks' time, remember, work hard on your recruitment business. Don't just be busy working in it. And finally, make a difference in the lives of your clients, your candidates, and your colleagues if you've got them. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.